Wind or insect, the process of pollination. For a plant to be pollinated, the pollen grains, which are the male sex cells, need to move from the anther here to the stigma here. It is possible for the pollen cells of the same plant to fertilize itself. So it's possible for the pollen cells to move from here to here and for the plant to fertilize itself. That is called self-pollination. And in those situations, you tend to find that the stamen and the stigma are designed so that that can happen quite easily. However, just like in animals, it's not really ideal for animals that are too closely related to each other to mate. The same kind of principle occurs in plants, and they like to try and cross-pollinate, i.e. the pollen from one plant going to the stigma of a different plant. Consequently, there needs to be a way of moving the pollen from the anther to the stigma of a different plant. As plants themselves can't get up and walk, there needs to be other strategies of making this happen. And there are two main ones. The first one is that wind comes along and literally blows the pollen away. And the second one is that an insect comes in and is going to try and feed from the nectar, which is found at the bottom of the plant down here. As they come in, they brush the pollen off the anther, and then they fly off to another plant, and as they come past the stigma is slightly sticky, and so the pollen that is already on the body of the insect can stick onto the stigma. So if you look at this picture, you can see that the bottom of the bee here will have brushed these anther, and so will then have pollen on it. When it then flies off to another plant, when it comes in, it will then rub its bottom on the stigma here, and so that plant will be pollinated. These are all photographs of insect-pollinated flowers, and you can see that they all share various key characteristics. First of all, they're brightly coloured to attract the insect into them. And secondly, you can see that they have prominent anthers, and the stigma is then slightly recessed, so that then when the insect comes in, the first thing that will happen is they will brush against the anther, and then the second thing is that they will brush against the stigma. Conversely, wind-pollinated flowers are not nearly as sort of attractive, because they aren't trying to attract anything towards them. What they need to do, however, is they need to make sure that the wind is able to blow the pollen off the anthers. As a result, the anthers will be very, very prominent here, and will be sort of flapping in the wind, if you like. So here is a classic example of a wind-pollinated plant. These bits essentially are all anthers, and you can see that they're absolutely loaded with pollen. So if the wind blows, the pollen will be blown off these anthers, and will then be blown hopefully to the stigma of another similar flower. This photograph actually shows the pollen being blown off the flower here. You can see all of this is actually pollen.